For instance, something like the flower pot still life painting started with, I had a collection. I've always been fascinated by miniatures, and I had a miniature collection growing up. And one of those miniatures was a vase, a tiny little vase. And I found it in a box probably in 2004 or so. At the time, I was really investigating Matisse and Picasso and those guys. And I thought, oh, what would this be like if I just made up my own flowers coming out of this vase? And so I sat the little vase on a table and I drew it, and that's where they came from. Drawing is the impetus for everything, for the paintings and sculptures and everything else that I do. It's always been a constant thing in my life for over 30 years, 35, probably 40 years. You know, as a way to connect with myself and my surroundings and a form of escapism. And it's just something I've always done, and it's something that's always made me feel comfortable in my surroundings. The black and white paintings are probably the most direct reference to a drawing. Preoccupation with trash. A lot of trash was being created in the studio. I mean, you know, I use a lot of material, a lot of paint, a lot of paper towels, things like that. And at one point, I think in around 2013, I was also thinking about sculpture. And so I just decided to, instead of throwing the stuff out, just glue it onto the canvas. I've long been interested in Eastern philosophies and religions, Buddhism in particular, different sects of Buddhism. I mean, I always found the practice of the Tibetan sand mandalas, it's a lesson in impermanence. They work on this thing for like 3 weeks or a month. As soon as it's done, they just wipe it away, which is really interesting to me. But to be specific with my paintings, they came up as it's like a vehicle, like the tabletop paintings and the blue flies even. It's just like a structure to put the marks and shapes and color in. I'm not sure exactly how the mandalas came about, to be honest with you, but they do function as a container. Seeing what can come out of it, as opposed to it just being a function of erasing something. It's erasing it, but it's also seeing what it can then become, particularly a white over a black line. It becomes a whole new composition, not a composition, but a whole new way of mark making, pushing things back and pulling them to the foreground at the same time. That big painting started that on the day that my dog Francis was put down, and I had a lot of emotion sort of running through me, and so I just came in and started it, and I started out with a image of Fran on the painting. And she slowly got covered up, but she's still there. I just kind of blasted through and made that painting in several days in a row. I mean, it's part of the Whiteout series, and the loggia is a reference to the outdoor garden at Plum and Poe in LA. I sat there a couple years ago. I sat there for a day and just drew all the plants in there, and that's where it started. The relation is that they're just paintings, but I'm not sure what makes it different. That's really just about the stationery for the studio. and drawing on that stationery and blowing it up, silk screening it, and then just taking it into the studio and going wherever it goes. I don't think about it going from English to another language. I mean, I think titles are cool, they're necessary, they're important, they're fun, they can inform the work, but I don't want a title to ever overshadow the work or how people can be connected to it or not. I mean, I think that if they find a connection, or if they've convinced themselves that something is in the painting is a direct relation to the title, then that's fine. I'm not imposing that on anyone. I think that that's a pretty astute point. I think everything's just to be continued. I don't know. It's all going and evolving and coming in and out and back and forth, and so the paintings do that as well. And I kind of am interested in the idea of bringing all this stuff back because it's never really done, and so it can continue. I think the last couple years, certainly since Arthur was born, there's been a lot of joy in the work. I stand by the thing where I don't want to impose anything on anyone with the paintings. People can pull what they're going to pull out, see what they want to see, and that's part of it. That's part of the life continuing outside of the studio. I mean, I'm always hopeful that people find something that makes them happy.